Napoleon, The Art of War and Power, Maxim 21. When an army carries with it a battering train or large convoys of sick and wounded, it cannot march by too short a line upon its depots. Note: it is above all in mountainous countries and in those interspersed with woods and marshes that it is of importance to observe this maxim, for, the convoys and means of transport being frequently embarrassed in defiles, an enemy by maneuvering may easily disperse the escorts or make even a successful attack upon the whole army when it is obliged, from the nature of the country, to march in an extended column. Maxim 22. The art of encamping in position is the same as taking up the line in order of battle in this position. To this end, the artillery should be advantageously placed. Ground should be selected which is not commanded or liable to be turned, and, as far as possible, the guns should cover and command the surrounding country. Note: Frederick has remarked that in order to be assured that your camp is well placed, you should see if, by making a small movement, you can oblige the enemy to make a greater, or if after having forced him to retrograde one march, you can compel him to fall back another. In defensive war, all camps should be entrenched in the front and wings of the position they occupy, and care should be taken that the rear is left perfectly open. If you are threatened with being turned, arrangements should be made beforehand before taking up a more distant position, and you should profit by any disorder in the enemy's line of march, to make an attempt upon his artillery or baggage. Maxim 23. When you are occupying a position which the enemy threatens to surround, collect all your force immediately and menace him with an offensive movement. By this maneuver you will prevent him from detaching and annoying your flanks in case you should judge it necessary to retire. Note: this was the maneuver practiced by General Desaix, Desaix, in 1798 near Rodstadt. He made up for inferiority in numbers by audacity, and maintaining himself the whole day in position in spite of the vigorous attacks of the Archduke Charles. At night he effected his retreat in good order and took up a position in the rear. It was in accordance also with this principle in the same campaign that General Moreau Moreau gave battle at Biberach to secure his retreat by the passes of the Black Mountains. A few days after, he fought at Schlingen, Schlingen, with the same object. Placed in a good defensive position, he menaced the Archduke Charles by a sudden return to the offensive, while his artillery and baggage were passing the Rhine by the bridge of Hunningen, and he was making all the necessary arrangements for retiring behind that river himself. Here, however, I would observe that the execution of such offensive demonstrations should be deferred always till toward the evening, in order that you may not be compromised by engaging too early in a combat which you cannot long maintain with success. Night, and the uncertainty of the enemy after an affair of this kind, will always favor your retreat, if it is judged necessary. But, with a view to mask the operation more effectually, fires should be lighted all along the lines to deceive the enemy and prevent him from discovering this retrograde movement. For in a retreat it is a great advantage to gain a march upon your adversary. Maxim 24. Never lose sight of this maxim, that you should establish your cantonments at the most distant and best protected point from the enemy, especially where a surprise is possible. By this means, you will have time to unite all your forces before he can attack you. Note: in the campaign of 1745, Marshal Turenne lost the Battle of Marienthal by neglecting this principle, for if, instead of reassembling his divisions at Erbsthausen, he had rallied his troops at Mergentheim behind the Tauber, his army would have been much sooner reunited, and Count Mercy, in place of finding only 3,000 men to fight at Erbsthausen, of which he was well informed, would have had the whole French army to attack in a position covered by a river. Someone indiscreetly asked Turenne how he had lost that battle of Marienthal. "By my own fault," replied the marshal. "But when a man has committed to no faults in war, he can only have been engaged in it but a short time." Maxim 25. When two armies are in order of battle and one has to retire over a bridge, while the other has the circumference of the circle open, all the advantages are in favor of the latter. It is then a general should show boldness, strike a decided blow, and maneuver upon the flank of his enemy. The victory is in his hands. Note: this was the position of the French army at the famous Battle of Leipzig, which terminated the campaign of 1813 so fatally for Napoleon. for the Battle of Hanau was of no consequence comparatively in the desperate situation of that army. It strikes me that, in a situation like that of the French army previous to the Battle of Leipzig, a general should never calculate upon any of those lucky chances which may arise out of a return to the offensive, but that he should rather adopt every possible means to secure his retreat. With this view, he should immediately cover himself with good entrenchments to enable him to repel with inferior numbers an attack of the enemy, while his own equipments are crossing the river. As fast as the troops reach the other side, they should occupy positions to protect the passage of the rear guard, and this last should be covered by a tête de pont, as soon as the army breaks up its camp. During the wars of the Revolution, too little regard was paid to entrenchments, and it is for this reason we have seen large armies dispersed after a single reverse, and the fate of nations compromised by the issue of one battle. Oh man, I can't decide if I want to break these up into 5 maxims per recording. I mean, that one was pretty short. I think I might just do that actually. So I'll end it here, but be picking back up. We'll be picking back up with it shortly.